So, how are you feeling tonight? Well, you're looking pretty good. Hi, I'm Bill Pearce, and this is Nightsounds, and I welcome you. Speaking of feeling pretty good, a couple of years ago, maybe I've mentioned this before, but it comes to my mind right now. I hadn't seen this guy for a long time. Used to work with him in another city, in the area of church music. And I guess it had been maybe 10 or 12 years since we'd spoken with each other. And I came up to one of his programs unexpectedly one night and went around the back to see him and say hi to him after all those years. And when he saw me, it looked like his face got white and his eyes got big, and he said, "Bill, are you still alive?" Well, Nightsounds is on the air, which gives a fairly good representation of the fact that I'm alive and breathing and feeling pretty good too. Anytime we talk about illness or even death, it's sort of a negative, and tonight I don't really mean to be maudlin in the subtitle of our program, but I saw this particular phrase not too long ago, and it was sort of a shocking and a negative type feel, but this person was a motivational speaker, and he was speaking about stillborn living. Now, a stillbirth is when a baby is delivered dead, and this is a sad scene, of course, but I'm using that adjective tonight for a purpose, not to be negative, but just to remind ourselves that we can go a long way, not realizing what God really had in store for us all along. Maybe we had missed it because we were careless. Perhaps our attention was somewhere else. Stillbirth living really cycles around the subject of spiritual potential and lack of it. And since we change our titles and our direction and our continuity each time we're on the air, tonight's program, Stillbirth Living, is really a motivational few moments together. We're going to just investigate this a little and perhaps personalize it as we go. So to get us underway in our musical agenda tonight, I've chosen one of the most exciting renditions of the old hymn, "Be Still My Soul," that I have ever heard. It's a live performance, and incidentally, all of our music tonight will be from live performances, so you might hear audience reaction and some extraneous noises throughout the performances. But this particular rendition, as I mentioned, is not only a moving one, but exciting. And I think you might agree, you'll probably recognize the tune if you're at all familiar with gospel music and some of the old hymns. So be ready for just a little bit of energy here tonight. Starts with a slow brass figure, and then it moves out. And here we go. Well, I didn't want you to go to sleep on me tonight before I got started. Reminds me of a comment a listener made to me one time after a concert that I had performed out east somewhere. He came up to me and he said, "Did you realize that 50% of your audience at night is asleep before 10% of your program has been completed?" I said, "No, I didn't realize that." And I responded as though he had just cited some great and impressive statistic. But he sort of smiled and went on with the conversation. But it's true. I wouldn't be surprised that you're just about gone right now. But I hope you can stay if you're able. I know a good night's sleep is therapeutic, and I would hate to be in the way of that. Tonight's program, Stillbirth Living, reminds me of an actual occurrence out on the West Coast. A friend of mine, who's a pastor of a large church in that area, had one of his congregation who was in the final days of cancer. This man had only a few more days and perhaps hours to be with them. The man's wife and his family and the pastoral staff of the church agreed to the suggestion that they have the funeral service before the man expired. And the one who was stricken with cancer thought that was a good idea. So they actually went through with this, and turned out to be one of the most joyous services they had ever known in that church, because any eulogy, any comments that were made about the man's life and service for Christ, which was very impressive, was made known before the fact instead of after the fact. It reminds me of some comments from the book Releasing Your Potential, written by Dr. Miles Monroe. Chapter 2 of this particular book had the caption, "How Will You Be Remembered?" And he said, quote, "Come with me in your imagination to the funeral of a loved one. Picture yourself driving to the funeral parlor or the church, parking your car, getting out. And as you walk inside the building, notice the flowers and the soft organ music. See the faces of friends and family as you move through the room, and you might even feel the shared sorrow of maybe losing the joy that radiates from the hearts of people there. As you walk to the front of the room and look inside the casket, you come face to face with yourself. This is your funeral, perhaps 5, 10, 15 years from today. All these people have come to honor you and to express feelings of love and appreciation for your life. As you take a seat and wait for the service to begin, look at the program in your hand. 5 persons are designated to bring remarks. The first speaker from your family, immediate and extended, your children, brothers, sisters, nephews, cousins, grandparents, have all come to attend. The second speaker is to be one of your friends, someone who can give a sense of what you were as a person. The third speaker from your work or profession. The fourth speaker is from the church and some community organizations where you are involved in service. And the fifth and final speaker is your spouse. Now think deeply. What would you like each of these speakers to say about you and your life after you'd passed? What kind of husband or wife, father or mother would you like their words to reflect? What kind of son or daughter or cousin? And before we carry this any further, we might take a few moments to seriously consider these questions. Dr. Monroe said, "I firmly believe that the greatest tragedy in life is not death, but life. Life that fails to fulfill its purpose and potential." And a person may have 100 children live many years, yet no matter how long he or she may live, if they cannot enjoy their prosperity and doesn't receive proper burial, I would say that a stillborn child is better off than he or she. It comes without meaning. It departs in darkness, and in darkness its name is shrouded. And though it never saw the sun or knew anything, it has more rest than does that man. While this passage asserts that it would be better for an individual never to have been born than for him or her to live on this planet many years and not fulfill the purpose for which God gave them birth. In essence, when we become aware of the tremendous potential that resides within us, really we're obligated to release that wealth to the world around us. We're not able to change the past, and of course the future is yet unlived. But these present moments provide us with opportunities to maximize our life and ability that lives within you. And you and I must take responsibility for our abilities. No one else can do it for us. As I go back and reflect on my history, I recall coming out of the service during World War II, and after being discharged, I felt totally lost. We had been swept right out of high school into the service of our country. There was a world war on. None of us really had the privilege of following any dream or ideal or further education or perhaps an occupation that we wanted to get into. Maybe some of us weren't even sure. We had no idea what we wanted to do or be. But I do recall on discharge, when it was all over, it was as if we were placed in a strange new world and asked to proceed, but we didn't know in what direction. So I recall sort of walking around in a stupor for the first couple of weeks, finally taking odd jobs here and there, playing jazz concerts and what we call gigs. I was a professional musician at the time, and even got a job as a truck driver for a while. Wandering around in my mind, I tried a couple of different schools, and that didn't work, and I was an academic underachiever, which didn't help anything. But it wasn't until I went out to Chicago to join a great religious institution there and go to school. Well, I quickly failed every subject I was into. I just was not able to learn from the system. So after wandering around Chicago for a while, I decided to go up to the radio station of this institution that actually owned 7 radio stations in the Midwest. Well, to make a long story short, I was really wavering, and God placed a guy there who came to me and said, "Bill, I have a feeling that you may be able to help us here in the radio station. Have you ever tried announcing?" And of course, I had to say no, I have never even thought of it. I have a hard time speaking, I have a dialect that's regional, I don't know what to say, and all of this. Fortunately, he was perseverant, and he said, "Well, why don't you give it a shot? You really can't lose anything." So at that point I did, and God began to work, and I stumbled around a while, and I began to like the whole idea of speaking on the radio. That was over 50 years ago. And now at this point, when I'm beginning to lose my powers of speech because of a neurological disease that affects the muscular system, I sort of am regressing back to that, but it does bring it very forcefully to my mind that in those 50 years, I had a responsibility to the Lord, who allowed me the privilege of getting into something that I had never anticipated before. So for 52 years, God has given the opportunity to speak on the air and to find out that I could sing a little bit, joined some musical groups, played the trombone for another, 63 years, I suppose, all told. And here we are tonight. I'd like to look back and say, by God's divine grace and mercy, it hasn't been a stillbirth life. I've given my heart to Him, and though I stumbled around for a while, He took a hold of me and was very compassionate, and other people helped me in my weaknesses. And here we are tonight, and I'm speaking with you, and maybe you are sort of wandering around in a stupor too, and you don't know where you're headed. I would just ask that you stop for a moment, and if you've never done it before, turn your life over to Jesus Christ. If you are a Christian, and you really haven't found your niche, make a point of even asking some friends, perhaps, who are Christians and know the Lord as Savior, to help you pray for a direction in your life. I believe He has something very special for every one of you listening to me right now. Maybe you're a loser, you're a failure, or you think you might be. It reminds me of a phrase I heard some time ago. Failure is not a person, it's an event. So with that in mind, let's just turn the whole thing over to the Lord and let Him take full control of our lives. Because as I look back, He has been faithful more than I could ever have imagined to me, and allowed me to be in the communications media for all these years. Well, tonight's program is subtitled Stillbirth Living. It seems negative, but the intent and the conclusion will be upbeat, believe me. Speaking of music that is in live performance, and tonight as we speak of the faithfulness of our God to do exceeding abundantly above all that we could ask or think, according to the power, His power, that works in us, I'd like to push the start button on my little CD player up here, bring in the audience of the Brooklyn Tabernacle Choir. Damaris Carbaugh singing the solo. Beautiful song entitled, He's Been Faithful, So Faithful to Me.
In my moments of fear, through every pain, every tear, there's a God who's been faithful to me. When my strength was all gone, when my heart had no song, still in love He's proved faithful to me. Every word He's promised is true. What I thought was impossible, I've seen my God do. He's been faithful, faithful to me. Looking back, His love and mercy I see. Though in my heart I have questioned, even failed to believe, yet He's been faithful, faithful to me. When my heart looked away, the many times I could not pray, still my God, He was faithful to to me. The days I spent so selfishly reaching out for what pleased me. Even then, God was faithful to me. Every time I come back to Him, He is waiting with open arms, and I see once again. He's been faithful, faithful to me. Looking back, His love and mercy I see. Though in my heart I have questioned, even failed to believe, yet He's been faithful, He's been so faithful, faithful to me.
Soloist Emerson Carval and the Brooklyn Tabernacle Choir. Lovely song entitled, He, God, Has Been Faithful to Me. Tonight's program, Stillbirth Living. Living below our potential. Nightsounds on the air, in case you've just joined us. I'm Bill Pearce. Thanks for being there. So many write in constantly and ask for a catalog of the various attendant ministries of this outreach. Our mailing address is Nightsounds, Wheaton, Illinois, 60189. And our email address is nightsoundsradio@aol.com. That's nightsoundsradio@aol.com. And tonight's program, centering around the subject of realizing our emotional, spiritual potential. Poetess Leona Choi wrote, "Life, don't pass me by. I've been sitting by the side of the road waiting for you for such a long time. I was sure you'd appear someday. So I figured I'd delay doing anything, becoming anything, until you came my way. I didn't realize you'd be going so fast and right on past. I expected you to slow down for me and give me a chance finally to climb on board. Now, I fear you sped on by, leaving me behind to cry and regret that we hadn't met years ago. Why did I defer living to dream about someday, that fantasy that may never come my way?" And to repeat this phrase that we began with tonight, the greatest tragedy in life is not death, but life. Life that fails to fulfill its purpose and potential. And once again, I firmly believe that there are many out there listening tonight who don't realize the fantastic potential God has placed inside of them. Maybe you're one of them. And as we come to the closing few moments of our program tonight, I just want to thank you sincerely for being there, for being with me, listening, hearing, considering your life's direction. The will of God is the most important thing you can ever experience. Thank you so much for joining me. Our mailing address, once again, Nightsounds, Wheaton, Illinois, 60189. May God bless you, be very near you, until we join again in a few short hours for more on the program Nightsounds. Hope you have a great day tomorrow, and until that moment we meet again, a very pleasant good night to all of you.